let's do it. Let's learn how to display a list of items input by a user. Instead of displaying these 1 and 2 elements here and there, let's learn how we can display a list. So I want to build on top of that form that we were doing in our previous lesson. So let's select a group again, drag it on the screen, and we'll just center it really quick. So we'll align to parent, center right there. So we'll give it that flat color, and then let's give it this incredible looking pink. Let's just use 2 elements for this example. So drag our input over, and we'll also have a button. So come up here, we'll select our button, we'll drag that over. Actually, we're gonna need 3. We're gonna need something to display the list, of course, duh. So we need a text box, drag that over, and let's give this a column alignment so everything is nice and neat. And that's all we really need for this example as far as elements, but we're not gonna worry about changing the state variable or popping up alerts. I just wanna show you how to display lists. So to do this, let's come to our database first, of course. Let's go to our user, and right now we don't have anything. So let's create a field. Well, what do we want to do? Let's allow a user to upload a list of their favorite animals. So they have animals, and then we have a field type, and it will just be text. But in this example, it's important to note that this field is a list, meaning it's going to have multiple entries, and we need to be able to have the user do that. So let's check that. Now you can see animals is going to be a list of text. So that's what we want. Let's go back to our design. Now, what do we need to do next? Well, think ahead a little bit. We need a way to display the list, so we need to get rid of this and make it a dynamic variable. So instead of edit me, whoops, we don't want to delete it. Just delete the text. We'll insert dynamic data. We're going to be getting that current user's animals list. So current user and get their animal. So this will allow you to display that list of animals. So let's move on to the workflow of the button, because we do need to update our thing in our database. So let's add a workflow. And what are we going to do? Well, we're going to make a change to a user. So let's make a change to a thing. And the thing we're changing is the current user. So something about that user is going to change. So let's change another field. What are we changing? Well, we're changing the animals. Now, notice it doesn't say animals equals. It just says animals and then allows us a few options. So this means it knows it's a list, right? So we need to add something to the list, remove it, set a list, or remove or clear the list. Now, what do we want to do? Well, we want to add something. So let's animals add. And what do we want to add? Well, we want to add whatever they input in our input field. So input A's value is what's going to be added to animals. And that's really all that we need to do to store that in our database. Now we have our beautiful form right here. Let's input an animal. We'll just say penguin. And let's hit submit. And we'll run through the next. For the next one, I'll actually get off debug mode, but you can see it displays our penguin there. Let's get out of debug mode. And now let's add another one. So let's say I was going to do giraffe, but I don't know how to spell that off the top. Giraffe. And then let's submit. And now we can see giraffe. I don't know if that's how you spell that, but we're going to go with it. And you can see that it's separated by a comma, though. And we don't want that. We want a list. So how do we do that? Let's make sure that's how it's actually getting displayed. Let's just enter test. I can't even think of an animal. Submit. So we just have penguin, giraffe, and test separated by a comma. But we don't want to display like that again, so let's fix that. Now, in our design, how are we going to change that? Well, let's come back to our text and learn about how we can format text. So at the end of animals, if you come and select more, you can see you have these operators. Then we can see we have each items. And then if you scroll way down, you can see minus item, merged with, intersect, filtered, or format text. There's a bunch of different ways that Bubble offers you to format or manipulate how text is displayed. So I encourage you to play around with these. Again, we're not going to cover all of them, but I do want to go over this join with feature. So instead of current users animals, we're going to do something different. So let's insert dynamic data, but this time we want to do a search for. And the reason being is because when we're formatting with a join with line break, it only works when you do a search for something. Don't ask me why. I literally have no idea. Bubble, if you can let me know, that'd be awesome. But we're going to do a search for a user. And now this is important because when you do a search for a user, it's going to search for all of the users, not just one. So we need to put a constraint and say we need to look for email And then we want the email to be equal to our current user's email. So it's basically just checking if the current user logged in, it's looking for that user's email, and it's only going to return that user's data. So let's search for that, and we'll come here and we'll select each item's animal. So now we have search for user that is related to our current user, find their animals, and that's what we want to list. Now you can come and see this operator down here that says join with. So we want to select that, and then simply type in line_break and hit enter. Now let's preview this and see what happens. So let's make sure we're running as a user that exists in our database. So we'll run as test. That way it just knows what email is associated. So let's see what happens when we input a animal. So we have tiger, and we'll run next. Let's get off to bug mode again. I don't know why we default to that. We have tiger, we have a fish, and you can see that instead of a comma, it put it as a list. So this is super cool. We can format text and manipulate how it's displaying on our page with Bubbles operators. Again, there's going to be a ton of operators to play around with, and you can change and format text quite a bit, so I encourage you to play around with some of them and see what they do, as well as reference Bubbles documentation if you do get confused, or you want to learn about some specific operator and are having troubles getting it set up. But you can keep adding as many things as you want here, and it will keep generating the list. Again, you just saw something very interesting, though. When I entered the same piece of information, it didn't allow me to do that. So that's a default behavior, meaning that that record already exists. We can't add another one. So also something to think about when you're building these applications. Now let's go see the database and see what it looks like. So we'll come back to our editor and our database. We'll refresh. And we can see that our animals are still separated by commas. We're just manipulating the text on the front end to display to the user. But if we clicked and edited this, you can see that we have our animals in a list format here. And you could go in and manually delete whatever one you don't want. Say you save, then it's only going to display those two animals. So now I hope you understand how you can manipulate the text and how it's formatted on the front end for a user, because it's super important that not all text is going to be out of the box how you want it. So you do need to format it with different operators that Bubble provides. So we're almost done with Module 1. We have one more lesson that you need to get through. And I want to jump right into that because in Module 2, that's where the magic happens. That's where the fun is. And that's what I'm excited to get into. We have a great foundation so far. Let's keep building upon it and finish off Module 1 strong. I'll see you in the next lesson.